It's time for Preserving Your Dignity and Your Money, Planning for Successful Aging with Nugen Law. And now your host, Bryan Nugen, estate planning and elder law attorney.
Good morning, and welcome to Preserving Your Dignity and Your Money, Planning for Successful Aging with Nugen Law. I'm Bryan Nugen, founder of Nugen Law and your host for our program. The purpose of our show is to have weekly, in-depth conversations about matters relevant to folks as they walk down the path of successful aging. Our listeners will learn what it is to age with dignity and how best to protect their money. I've been practicing law for 3 decades. I'm licensed to practice in Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, and Florida, and actively represent clients in all 4 states. My practice, the attorneys, and our interdisciplinary team of professionals who practice with me at Nugen Law concentrate on working with clients in estate planning and elder law and areas related to them, such as estate and trust administration, guardianships, and planning for those with special needs. Today, I'm going to be speaking with you about sheltering assets and getting benefits. So first, let's look at by the numbers. 10,000 people per day turn age 65 in the United States. Seniors, I call this the silver tsunami. Seniors are the fastest growing population. 16.8% of the U.S. population is age 65, with 55.8 million people in that age bracket, increasing to 88 million people by the year 2050. 5.7 million in the United States are suffering with Alzheimer's. It's diagnosed every 65 seconds, believe it or not, and that's increasing to every 33 seconds by the year 2050 if we don't change or learn more about how to treat the disease and how to cure and stem the disease. 1 in 3 seniors dies with some type of a dementia, and the cost of care can be devastating. So we're going to be talking a lot about assets and how to protect them. So the first thing we need to do is define what is an asset. How is that defined? So an asset is anything of value. Could be your home, farm, stocks and bonds, life insurance policies, CDs, checking and savings account, cash. So that's an asset, anything with a value. Why is it important to understand what an asset is? Well, 70% of seniors will require long-term care at some point in their lives. So long-term care, what is that? Long-term care, assisted living facility stay, rehabilitation, nursing home stay, memory care unit stay. So at some point, 70% of us, 7 out of 10, will require some type of a long-term stay. And despite a 70% chance of needing long-term care, a majority of seniors haven't taken any steps to preserve their assets. So 70%. Let's talk about that, and maybe that's you or maybe that's your parents. Let's talk about what your number one question should be in this instance, and that's if I or a loved one require care in my home, right, or an assisted living facility or in a nursing home, what's it going to cost? How much is that going to cost me? Well, by the numbers in Indiana, let's go first. In-home personal care or attendant care is going to cost on average, and this is from the year 2021. We don't have numbers out for 2022 or 2023 yet, but in Indiana, this is based upon Genworth insurance studies. In-home care costs around $5,339 per month. Adult daycare around $1,192, assisted living facility stays $3,485, and then nursing home stays. If you want a semi-private room, that means with a roommate, you're around $7,500 a month, and a private room around $9,400 per month. Now, those figures, as I say, are statewide, but they're a couple of years out of date. So I can tell you those are all low, frankly. Now, if you take those figures that I've just quoted to you and stretch it out or look at what that costs on an annual basis. So if you want in-home personal care, so you want that attendant that's one-on-one care, you're going to be spending on average around $64,000 per year. Adult daycare around $14,000 a year. If you're staying in an assisted living facility, around $42,000 per year. and that nursing home care for that semi-private room, around $91,000 a year, or if you want a private room, around $113,000 per year. So those are sobering numbers. It's not hard to burn through a lot of cash very quickly. 75% of single individuals, this is according to the United States Department of Health, and 50% of couples exhaust their life savings within 1 year of entering a nursing home. So the question is that how you want to spend your life savings? I hope not. After you identify the cost of care, the next question is, what assets do you want to protect? How much time do you have to protect your assets? And how will you pay for your care if your assets are protected? So what assets to protect? In my opinion, I want to protect all or nearly all, right? But the earlier that we act to protect those assets, the better. So how much time do you have to protect your assets? When we say early, what does that mean? The ideal is 5 years in advance of the need for care. And it's never too late, though. It's never too late for us to protect assets. There's just a different way that we go about preserving assets if we didn't have this trust that I'm about to talk about in place. So never assume that because the family farm was sold for grandpa or grandma or mom or dad, that has to be the way. It always breaks my heart when I hear those stories that folks have lost the family farm, sold the lake cottage, sold the house, went through an entire retirement caring for someone, and only to learn after the fact that that didn't have to happen. There are other alternatives. So how do you pay for the care? There are, let's go through those. Medicare, long-term care insurance, VA, Veterans Administration benefits in some instances, Medicaid, and then by self-paying. So first, let's talk about Medicare. There is a myth that Medicare will pay for a hospital stay, rather that Medicare will pay for me. So if I go to the nursing home, I have Medicare. Paid for mom, she was in the nursing home, paid for her. That's a myth. What people are confusing is that Medicare will pay for a hospital stay, right? And then it will pay for your rehabilitation for a period of time, assuming you're continuing to progress. So if you have an Advantage plan, a Medicare Advantage plan, you can receive up to 20 days of rehabilitation. If you have traditional Medicare, you can receive up to 100 days of rehabilitation. And what's confusing is rehabilitation oftentimes is happening at the nursing home. So when people thought, Medicare paid for mom's stay or dad's stay, grandma's stay, grandpa's stay, it most likely was paying for the rehabilitation. It was not paying for their extended care in a nursing home. The next area we're going to talk about is long-term care insurance. Long-term care insurance, depending upon the terms of the policy, long-term care insurance may pay for some or all costs of in-home care, assisted living stays, nursing home stays, etc. What I would say, if you're going to get a long-term care insurance policy, the sooner the better. When you have few, if any, health concerns. What I am seeing, and I have seen with my clients over the years, is that those policies originally were promised that their rates would never increase. And the reality is we're living longer than we anticipated. Using my own family as an example, my grandmother made it to 100, grandfather 101, my great-grandpa 110, right? So people are living long and really living in a very healthy manner for an extended period of time. So the insurance companies have recognized, we thought that folks were going to be passing earlier. It's very expensive for us to maintain these long-term care insurance policies and provide the benefits we promised. So even though originally we said your rates may not increase or they may increase only by a certain percentage, we can't do that any longer. And so clients are oftentimes receiving letters in the mail from their long-term care insurance providers saying, do you want to keep this policy? If so, your rates are going to be increased by X percentage. And by the way, this is not a cap. They're going to continue increasing or may continue to increase over time. Or you may take reduced benefits to keep your costs lower, et cetera, et cetera. But long-term care insurance, I used to see a lot of my clients with policies, and not as much anymore. I'm seeing folks starting to slow down on having those, and it really is based upon the cost of having those policies year after year. Now, on occasion, I have clients that have policies that have low premiums and decent benefits, but I'm finding that more and more to be the exception, not the rule. Next, to provide for our care, we're going to look at the Veterans Administration. If you are a veteran and had served during wartime, there are some other qualifiers that are there as well, but there is a program through the VA called Aid in Attendance. It's a pension program, and a veteran can receive money on a monthly basis, up to around $2,300 per month to help defray costs of care, mostly using that money to pay for in-home care. The spouse of a veteran may also receive benefits from this Aid in Attendance pension program. So the VA is something to consider. There is another another VA program that folks may not be aware of, and that is simply as a veteran, where you can receive in-home care, not your spouse, but you could receive in-home care paid for directly by the VA, not a pension payment, as was in the Aid in Attendance example, but the VA would pay for attendants to come into your home and provide direct care for you. And oftentimes our veterans aren't aware of that. I always take pleasure in letting folks know, hey, go to the VA hospital, have an assessment performed, and if the doctor feels that you, in fact, should be receiving in-home care to keep you there, you'll get it. It's not a taxable benefit, and it just that little bit of extra help, maybe 10 hours a week in your home, could keep you there for a much more extended period of time. The next way of paying for our care as we age would be Medicaid. So we all get Medicare. Medicaid would only be for those folks with typically some asset restrictions, some income restrictions, et cetera. So Medicaid benefits. Medicaid is a huge program that pays for all different types of services and needs for the applicants. What I'm talking about, though, is specifically for my senior clients at Nugen Law. Those folks, as they age, those are the types of Medicaid benefits that we're looking for. So Medicaid could pay for some or all of your in-home care, depending upon how much in-home care you need. It could pay for your stay at an assisted living facility, assuming that ALF, that assisted living facility, takes Medicaid. Some do, some don't. I'm finding more and more assisted living facilities take Medicaid. Didn't used to be the case. It was a struggle to find one, but now they're recognizing a need and they're being constructed. Medicaid can also pay for one's nursing home stay or memory care unit stay, so long as it's a Medicaid-approved facility. And again, a vast majority are. And then finally, the way to pay for your care is self-pay, right? So you're going to, without planning, you're going to deplete your assets, lose your nest egg, and inheritance. So deplete your savings, stocks, bonds, IRAs, mutual funds, CDs, checking accounts, cash it in, use it, pay for your care. Sell your secondary residence, sell the farm, sell the family home, to pay for that $100 and some $1,000s a year in that nursing home. So how do we avoid depleting our assets? How do we avoid that self-pay option? So I want to focus on the instrument that we typically use, and that is a type of a trust. So before we get there, though, and before we start talking about that trust, we want to know, if you're looking for those VA benefits, how do you qualify? If we're looking for those Medicaid benefits, how do you qualify? So for a veteran had to have served 90 days active duty with 1 day during wartime. They served in World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and the Gulf War. And there are dates that are specific to service and for each of those wars, conflicts, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Gulf War. And so that's the first qualifier. Did you serve? Were you active for 90 days, with one of those days being during wartime? And did you have other than a dishonorable discharge? So you needed to have been discharged honorably. And if you were discharged dishonorably, there is an appeal process you can go through. So there are some instances where maybe it's appropriate for you to request that dishonorable discharge be set aside, and perhaps the regulations with the VA have changed from then to now, and you might look at having that dishonorable discharge set aside. Third qualifier for those VA benefits: 65 years of age or have a permanent and total disability, patient in a nursing home for long-term care due to a disability, getting Social Security disability insurance or supplemental security. And you need help with daily activities. So daily activities, things like bathing, feeding, dressing. You have to stay in bed large portion of the day due to illness. You're in a nursing home due to loss of mental or physical abilities, or your eyesight is limited. So those are some of the things that we're looking at for VA benefits. And then finally, your assets and your annual income have to be less than $155,000 for the year 2024. So I or a spouse meet all VA requirements, except my income and assets are too high. What can I do? Hold that thought. We'll talk about that in a minute. I want to talk next about Medicaid and what the Medicaid qualifiers are. So like VA, in order to receive Medicaid benefits, I have to be 65 years of age or older. I need to be blind or disabled. So disabled is I'm needing assistance with, again, those activities of daily living. I need some help. Or I have some level of a dementia, cognitive impairment. That I earn no more than $2,800 per month gross. And my assets are no more than $2,000. So here's the question. My assets and my income are too high for VA Medicaid benefits. Is this discussion that I'm having with you today a waste of time? Actually, no, it's not. You really still can qualify. And so normally what we're looking at, if your assets and your income aren't in those parameters, we want to look at asset protection planning. So how do we handle asset protection planning? First, we have proactive veterans benefits planning, and then we have proactive Medicaid planning. So pre-planning is preferred. I want to pre-plan 3 years in advance for those VA benefits, 5 years in advance for those Medicaid benefits. And the assets you want to protect must be out of your control for a period of those 3 years for VA or 5 years for Medicaid before you apply for the benefits. So what happens is the VA looks back. What have you done for the past 3 years with your assets? Medicaid looks back 5 years. What have you done with your assets in the past 5 years? We describe that as a penalty period. So VA and Medicaid penalty period, a period of time during which you may have no benefits determined by looking at how much you gave away during the past 5 years. So how does that work? If you gave assets away and you didn't get anything in return for them, so you weren't purchasing a service, you weren't putting a new roof on the house, you were just cutting a check to your kids, we create a penalty. And very generally, I'm going to just talk about Medicaid for a minute. Very generally, what it means is if you're applying for benefits and within the past 60 months, the past 5 years, you've given money away, we're going to take that money that you've given away and divide it by a figure. So hypothetically, let's say you've given away $70,000 within the last 5 years, and hypothetically, the divisor is 7,000. So if we take that 70,000, we divide it by 7, the answer is 10. So the real penalty period is not the 5 years. The real penalty period is the 10. And what that says, Medicaid says, for 10 months, we won't provide for your care. So if your cost of care at the facility of choice is $9,500 a month, if you do the math quickly, you're going to recognize that it actually cost you more money because of that gift than had you held on to the money and just privately paid. So gifting is something to be very cautious of. what we want to talk about is how do you give up control of your assets, still have them protected, and preserve it for your heirs and your beneficiaries. So oftentimes people say, well, I'm healthy. I'm just going to give money to my kids. I'm going to give money to my kids and ask them to hold it for me. Here's the concern I have with that approach. And I always chuckle when I'm sitting in a conference room with my clients and they bring their kids with them, and the kids are saying, "Can't mom or dad just give us the money? We'll hold the money for them." Well, here are the 4 Ds. The 4 Ds that I see that when we have we make gifts to kids. The kids may have debt. The kids may go through a divorce. The kids may have a disability, and the kids may unexpectedly pass away, death. So I give money to my children and say, please hold this money for me. And I'm doing it to protect it for you and your siblings and my grandkids. And so if I go to a nursing home, I don't want to spend it. So let's say the child has credit card debt. They have an issue with charging. The credit card company, if they're going to sue the child and pursue them for collection, a child's defense cannot be, oh, yes, I have $100,000 in my checking account, but that's not really my money. That's my mom's money. I'm just holding it for her. Credit card company doesn't care. If that account is in your name, it's able to be seized to satisfy the debt. So I go through a divorce. So you've given money to your children, and they go through a divorce. Well, if I am the spouse that's asking for the divorce, it's very unlikely I'm going to say, oh, you have that money in your account? I don't want any of that. It's okay. You can have that. We need to think ahead, and we want to make sure that that money isn't available if we have that second D, that divorce. And next is disability, right? So a child, everything is fine. Today, everything is fine. Tomorrow, it's winter. Doesn't feel like it today. It's so nice out. But we have an automobile accident and the child suffers a disability. And now that child is in the same situation that you were trying to protect from. They have money in their name. And now we are scrambling to protect that. And it's your money. They were holding it for you, but it's your money, and it's going to affect their ability to receive disability payments. And then finally, death. So if a child is holding money for you and they unexpectedly pass away, we can never count on order of death, so they unexpectedly pass away. It's unlikely that their estate planning says money goes to my parents, right? Their estate planning typically says it goes to my spouse or it goes to my kids. So here they are. They've passed away. They were holding money for you, and what do you know? It goes to their spouse. So now your daughter-in-law, your son-in-law, who's no longer married to one of your children, has your funds. So let's talk about pre-planning and asset protection trusts. So asset protection trusts are unique to Medicaid and VA. And I like to analogize these to it's like a treasure chest. So we have a treasure chest. We open that. So the treasure chest is the trust. We come to the attorney and we say, hey, attorney, Bryan, please prepare a trust for me. And I want the money to be held in trust, and I'm going to establish beneficiaries during my lifetime. And when I pass away, the money is going to be distributed to children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, charities, church, etc. So that's the treasure chest we're building. But this treasure chest has a big lock on it. And the lock has different keys. So we're going to lock that treasure chest and give a key to someone to manage that money in that treasure chest for us. So you as the client at Nugen Law, you're going to decide what treasures do you want to protect. Typical examples: the farm, the house, the lake house, a brokerage account. Those are the types of things that clients are typically saying we want to protect. So the more treasures you put in the treasure chest into the name of the trust, the more protected. It doesn't have to be everything. And oftentimes it isn't. The client decides, these are things I want to protect. These are other assets that if I happen to lose them, I'm not going to be heartbroken. I have some cash, and if I happen to lose that, that's okay. But I want immediate access to that money. I just, in good conscience, can't put it into that treasure chest. So assets outside of the treasure chest are subject to being rated. So rated by pirates. So what are pirates in this instance? Senior care facilities, or rather senior care in your home, assisted living facilities, nursing homes, Medicaid. Not to say that those are bad places, because there's a time and place for everyone in their journey of life. And sometimes it's appropriate to be home. Sometimes it's appropriate to be in an independent living facility. Sometimes it's appropriate to be in an assisted living facility, a nursing home, right? Those things are appropriate. It's not a negative. It's just, if we can protect assets from your care as you age, the better. Now, who gets the key to watch and manage your treasure? So each key works differently. Here's the tough part. You cannot personally keep one of the keys. So somebody else has to have the key to access that treasure, and it can't be you. Children are typically a key holder, but they don't have to be. And keys may be taken away from a key holder for bad behavior. So there is a means that we normally have trust advisors that can become involved in the trust. And if someone is making very poor decisions, we would be able to amend their ability to use that key. So the key holder protections. If a key holder is a child, not always, but typically it is. Remember the 4 Ds I talked about before? Well, despite there being a key holder, if they experience debt or divorce, or they pass away unexpectedly or have a disability, the treasure inside the chest, your assets that you put inside that trust, are protected and can't go to those individuals that I was being concerned about before, the credit card collection company. That's avoided. So if your assets are there for your 3 years for the VA benefits, 5 years for the Medicaid benefits, you'll receive those benefits, assuming the other qualifiers that we discussed earlier about your age and your mental health, your physical condition are also in line. So if we have protected your assets, so you'll recall I was saying you can't have more than $2,000 in your name to get Medicaid benefits. If we have appropriate, sufficient assets inside that treasure chest, those assets are protected. So you're either going to look at other means of protecting money outside of the trust at that time, and there definitely is a way to do that. It's never too late to protect your assets. But so there is a means of doing that. But anything in that treasure chest, if it's been there long enough, inside that trust, if it's been there long enough, you're good, and it would be protected, and it wouldn't be used to pay for your care. So these treasure chests, these trusts, are also used for estate planning. So the trust not only protects your assets during your lifetime, not only allows you to get benefits such as VA or Medicaid, it also allows you to avoid probate at the time of your passing. So those trusts are written in such a way that it says, when I pass, my assets go to these individuals that I've indicated, and it's paid out over time. Or all outright, and so we can put all of that in the trust. So you're getting 2 things for this type of an asset protection trust: protecting assets during your lifetime, allowing you to get benefits with protected assets, and then finally allowing you to avoid probate and skip that probate administration process. So what are the benefits of these asset protection trusts, these treasure chests? Shelters and protects your assets. It will pay for, you can get public benefits to pay for in-home care, assisted living facility stays, memory care stays, nursing home stays. It avoids probate, avoids estate administration, and it gives you peace of mind. You control what will happen with your money as opposed to scrambling after the fact and trying to protect what you can in a crisis mode. People will say to me, gosh, if Medicaid is paying for my stay in a facility, I'm going to get substandard care. Let me tell you, 65% of residents in nursing homes have their stay paid for by Medicaid in Indiana. Care paid by for privately through long-term care, VA, or Medicaid is the same. I assure you, if you're in a facility and you're walking down the hallway, the attendants that are caring for you, the nurse that's caring for you, they're there to provide care for you. They're there because that is what they're doing. It's who they are. They are not treating you differently if your stay is being paid for by a child, if your stay is being paid for by a long-term care insurance policy, or if it's being paid for by the Medicaid or VA. No, your care is going to be the same for sure. So proactive VA Medicaid planning is more important than it has been in the past. State recovery is increasing. There's financial pressure at state and federal levels to get money back, and we have the best results for our clients with proactive planning. So it looks like we're getting close to the end of our show today. So I would like to thank you for listening. If you'd like to speak with me, J. Bryan Nugen at Nugen Law, or another attorney or someone else in my office, please give us a call at 260-925-3738 or email us at help@nugenlaw.com. Thank you for listening to Preserving Your Dignity and Your Money, Planning for Successful Aging with Nugen Law, and myself as your host, J. Bryan Nugen. I look forward to speaking with you next weekend here on WOWO at 9 a.m. Enjoy your weekend.
You've been listening to Preserving Your Dignity and Your Money, Planning for Successful Aging with Nugen Law. For more information, log on to nugenlaw.com or email help@nugenlaw.com. Nothing stated in today's program should be considered as legal advice, should not be considered as having created an attorney-client relationship between show host and guests and any listener. Nugen Law is not liable for anything that happens as a result of a listener relying on provided information as legal advice. The content is for informational purposes only.